You're not even asking for them back. You're past that. What you want is one last conversation, one last explanation, one last message that finally makes it make sense. You want closure. You want to understand why it ended the way it did, why they walked away without a word, why the door slammed shut before you could say what you needed to say. But what if I told you that the absence of closure isn't cruelty? What if God withheld that final conversation because giving it to you would have destroyed what He's trying to build? Today, I'm going to show you 3 reasons God removed them without closure. And by the end, you'll understand why no explanation was actually His protection. You'll learn what to do so you don't reopen what God has closed. And you'll walk away with peace, not because you got answers, but because you finally realized you don't need them. Let's begin. 1. Closure would have reopened the door. Here's what you need to understand. Your heart doesn't want information. Your heart wants reconnection. You tell yourself you just need to know why. You just need one conversation to understand what happened. But if God had allowed that conversation, you wouldn't have walked away with clarity. You would have walked away with hope. Hope that maybe there's still a chance. Hope that if you say the right thing, they'll come back. Hope that keeps you stuck in the same cycle that was breaking you. Closure, in your mind, sounds like peace. But in reality, closure becomes permission. Permission to keep texting. Permission to keep checking their page. Permission to reopen a door that God shut for your protection. And the enemy knows this. He doesn't need to bring them back into your life. He just needs to keep you obsessing over why they left. Think about what happens when someone gives you partial closure. They say, "It's not you, it's me." Or, "The timing just isn't right." Or, "I need to work on myself." And suddenly, your brain translates that into, "So there's still a chance if I just wait." You start monitoring their social media for signs they've worked on themselves. You start believing that if the timing was just different, it would have worked. And now you're not healing, you're hoping. And hope in the wrong direction is poison. That's why God sometimes removes people abruptly, because a slow fade gives you time to negotiate. A gradual ending gives you space to convince yourself it's not really over. But when God shuts the door without warning, there's no room for misinterpretation. It's done. And done is the only language your heart will actually listen to. Look at Lot's wife in Genesis 19. God told her, "Don't look back." He wasn't being harsh. He was saving her. The city she was leaving was under judgment. Everything behind her was destruction, but she couldn't help herself. She turned around, and the moment she looked back, she became a pillar of salt. That backward glance cost her everything. Not because God was cruel, but because looking back always pulls you into what you're supposed to be leaving behind. Here's the principle. When you look back, you stop moving forward. When you try to understand what God already removed, you delay what God is trying to give you. Lot's wife didn't just lose her future. She became a monument to the danger of nostalgia, a warning to everyone who came after her. Don't romanticize what God rescued you from. So here's what you do. If God removed them, don't chase the exit interview. Don't craft the perfect text that will finally make them explain. Don't rehearse what you would say if you had 5 minutes, because every time you replay that conversation in your mind, you're reopening what God closed. And what God closes, you should not reopen. If He shut that door, don't use your emotions as a crowbar to pry it back open. No closure is often God's protection. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you'll stop bleeding from a wound that's trying to heal. 2. God is breaking attachment, not punishing you. You keep replaying old messages. You keep checking if they viewed your story. You keep scrolling through old photos, old conversations, old memories. And every time you do, you feel worse. Not better, worse. Because what you're calling closure is actually an addiction, an emotional loop that your heart has learned to run, even when it's killing you. Here's how it works. Your brain releases dopamine when you think about them. That chemical rush, even when it's painful, becomes a habit. So now, even though they're gone, your brain keeps returning to them because it's chasing that hit. It's not love anymore, it's attachment. And attachment is a drug. God isn't withholding closure to hurt you. He's withholding it to detox you. Because as long as there's a thread of contact, even just the possibility of contact, your heart stays attached. And attachment to the wrong person is a chain. It doesn't matter how pretty the chain looks, it's still holding you captive. Philippians 3:13 says, "Forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead." Notice Paul didn't say, understanding what is behind. He said, forgetting. Because some things you're not meant to understand. Some things you're just meant to let go. Paul didn't need closure from his past as a persecutor of the church. He didn't need the people he hurt to explain why they forgave him. He just moved forward. He let God rewrite his story without needing everyone from his old life to approve the new chapter. That's what God is asking you to do now. Stop demanding that your past makes sense. Stop waiting for them to validate your pain or confirm your worth. Your worth was never theirs to confirm. It was always God's to declare. And He already declared it when He formed you in the womb, when He called you by name, when He sent His Son to die for you. That's your closure, not their words. His. Think of it this way. When a wound is healing, you don't keep touching it. You don't keep peeling back the bandage to see if it's better yet. You leave it alone. You let time and space do their work. And that's what God is asking you to do now. Stop touching the wound. Stop checking their page. Stop asking mutual friends how they're doing. Stop driving past places that remind you of them. Stop giving your mind permission to wander back into what God is trying to heal you from. Because here's what happens every time you check. You reset the healing process. It's like you're on day 29 of a 30-day detox, and then you go back and take one more hit. And now you're back to day 1. And what could have taken 30 days now takes 300 because you keep reopening what God is trying to close. Here's the action. Starve the loop. No contact, no stalking, no just checking. Delete the number. Unfollow the account. Block if you have to. Not out of bitterness, but out of obedience. Because God has given you a command to move forward. And you can't move forward while constantly looking back. No closure is often God's protection. He's not being cruel. He's being kind. Because He knows that as long as there's a door cracked open, you'll keep trying to walk through it. So He shut the door, locked it, removed the key, not to lock you out of something good, but to lock you into something better. 3. God is protecting your future self. Here's what would have happened if they had given you closure. You would have romanticized it. They would have sat you down, looked you in the eyes, and explained why it didn't work. And in that explanation, you would have found reasons to excuse their behavior, reasons to believe that maybe it wasn't that bad, reasons to think, well, if they were just going through something, maybe I should have been more patient. And now you're not free. You're guilty. Guilty for not doing enough. Guilty for not being enough. And that guilt becomes the hook that keeps you tethered to someone God already cut loose. Closure doesn't always bring peace. Sometimes closure brings justification. Justification for staying in a situation that was never meant to last. Justification for accepting breadcrumbs when God is preparing a feast. And that's why God removed them without explanation. Because explanation becomes excuse, and excuse becomes compromise, and compromise becomes captivity. Let me show you how this works. Imagine they told you, "I wasn't ready for something serious." Your brain hears, "So, if I just wait until they're ready, we can try again." Or they say, "I have too much going on right now." And you think, "So when things calm down, they'll come back." See how that works? Every explanation gives you a reason to hold on.